Hi everybody, welcome to today's session. Thanks so much for joining us. Got a great session lined up for you today. My name's Dan Aston, I'm Marketing Manager here at CrowdControlHQ. Before we kick off, just want to ask everyone if they can hear me loud and clear, and if you can also see the title slide for today's session. If you can hear me loud and clear, and if you can see the slide okay, please just send me a little message in the questions box. Can hear you loud and clear, can see the slides. Thanks a lot, Claire. Hopefully everyone can do the same. If there's any issues at any point, just send us a little message into that box and then we'll pick it up as we go through. So on that note, also, if you have any questions about the content of the session today, please also submit that into the question box. All fine here, thanks a lot, Jane. Please submit your questions into the box, and then if and when we've got a bit of time at the end of the session today, we can answer those questions for you. So we really look forward to doing that. And also, yeah, before we get started, last thing to mention, if you're joining us today, we'd love to hear from you or love to see you joining us. So, give us a tweet, give us a shout out or a LinkedIn mention. You can find us at CrowdControlHQ, at Neon Caffeine _ and at Teesside Uni. Yeah, love to see those posts from you, and we'll obviously get back to anyone that does tweet us or mention us on LinkedIn. Yeah, so with that, I think we can kick off. So today we're going to be looking at university social media trends and predictions for 2020. So here we go. So as I said, I'm Dan Aston, Marketing Manager at CrowdControlHQ. I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Rob from Neon Caffeine. You there, Rob?
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hi, Rob. And also the wonderful Jill Varley from Teesside Uni. You there, Jill?
I'm here, hi.
Wonderful, thanks, Jill. So you'll be hearing a little bit more from myself and then Rob and then Jill as we go through today's session. So I'm going to get started by looking at the agenda for today. So I'm going to share a little bit around some new data, some research that was completed in the summer of 2019 around university social media estates. Then we're going to look at some, look ahead really to where we think teams are going to be focusing their time and energy in 2020. We're going to be touching on how to sell social media internally and get buy-in from management. And also we're going to be looking at some of the risks and challenges to kind of look out for and obviously try to avoid as you getting into 2020. And then we're going to have some real life examples from Jill from Teesside University looking at one of their campaigns. So yeah, and then we're going to wrap up with a live Q&A at the end if we've got a bit of time to take your questions and respond back. So yeah, so just before we dive into some of the research stats, I just wanted to kind of set the scene a little bit, but I think if you're joining us today, you're already an advocate of social media. You don't need any convincing, but it's always interesting to take a look at some stats. And UCAS, I think might be a typo there with UCAS. UCAS did report 100% of students use some form of social media. So we know how prevalent it is and how important it is as a channel. But I really just wanted to raise the point and remind people obviously it's not just students, it's all the stakeholder groups across the institute, whether it's academics, partners, sources of funding, local community and whatnot. So obviously you've got many different audiences and also all of your social media accounts and networks. We do have a tendency to jump into students, obviously around the recruitment and things like that, but I like to try to take a step back and remember it's the whole estate. Social media is a bigger thing than just the recruitment. But there's some research completed earlier this year in the summer of 2019, and I just wanted to share some of the stats and some of the percentages I think that stood out to me, just to get people thinking and set the scene a little bit. So in terms of numbers of social media accounts, 18% of UK universities reported an increase in social media accounts from 2018 to 2019. If I'm honest, I thought it might be slightly higher than that, but it's still it's basically 1 in 5, I think, isn't it? But what was interesting alongside that is actually 23% of unis reported they don't actually record how many accounts they have representing the organisation. And if you think about also how many social media accounts out there exist that mention the university, alumni, it could be impersonation accounts, the different school accounts, might not be aware of. So just some interesting things, I think, to help get people thinking about, the scale and numbers of accounts and where those accounts might be. Social media users. So actually 19% recorded an increase in the number of people within the universities that have access to or are managing social media messages on behalf of the institute. And interestingly, alongside that, 32% actually don't record the number. So there's a bit of an unknown there, just something to think about again for your own social media estates. Potentially even worth doing a quick audit, to try to at least get a benchmark on who those individuals are that have access to those accounts across the estates. Social media inquiries. Okay, so 26% recorded an increase in inbound inquiries. So, no surprise there. 1 in 4, maybe again, I thought it would be a little bit higher, but 1 in 4 recording an increase in inbound inquiries. But interestingly, again, alongside that, about half, they don't record how many inbound inquiries they're getting. So just interesting to think, when it comes up to maybe trying to get the right resources to manage social media, can help to know, what levels you're currently dealing with. And also from my side, think about how many, think about this across all your existing accounts, maybe not just a central brand account. And I think the last point is around social media response times. It's an interesting one, really. 69% unions not recording response times. Obviously, around a third do record the response times. It's perhaps not so important, but similar to the last slide, if you know where you are today in terms of the volume and velocity of social media, helps you understand in terms of resourcing and things like that you might require. And also just having the confidence and knowing that you're kind of responding quickly helps just deliver a good experience on social media to all the different audiences, obviously students and all the other audiences as well. So yeah, just wanted to set the scene with a few stats there. So I'm going to actually pass over, if the power of the webinar software works for me. So Rob, are you there? I'm going to pass you over because I think the next few slides are for you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So I found this quote on an article, and hopefully you'll see the link there at the bottom, and we'll make sure that you've got that at the end of the webinar. So if you don't have clearly defined goals and alignment, you're not really sure where you're going to do, what you're going to measure. And I think the really important here is that many universities that I work with find that their senior managers are saying, right, okay, well, we've seen another university doing this, why aren't we? And I think we've got to try and encourage senior leaders as supporting social with a completely inward look to start with. While it's a very external channel, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing before you even embark on posting anything on social. And I think that's a challenge that social media managers have, is there's so many sort of, whether it's rankings, whether it's just anecdotal observations. So I think moving everybody back to a clearly defined set of goals that you can communicate across the organisation is going to put you in a really good footing going forward. Let's hope these slides do go forward. There we go. Oh, I think I've gone too far down. There we go. So when you're looking at what your KPIs are, I think it's starting to think about moving away from vanity metrics. With social media platforms seeing that such a decline in organic social, as well as changing the priority towards paid advertising, there's really not much point measuring these vanity metrics anymore. You might have the odd one as a way of a sort of embedding the rest of the KPIs, so you've still got something recognizable for your sort of senior leaders, but start to move on to more meaningful metrics, whether that's linking up with Google Analytics, so you're looking at your conversion stats, so are people coming from social to download a prospectus or to book an open day, and to start to measure how successful your content is in driving forward such actions. That's where you need to be going, as well as looking at the university's objectives. So don't just think about setting your KPIs for your department, and as long as they meet your department, that's fine. you've got to be doing social for the wider purpose of the organisation. So how are your activities helping the research agenda, or whether it's dealing with sort of community engagement, and not just your own internal community, but your local community, your regional community, and the public affairs side of it. So try to sort of read through those really exciting strategy documents and map how those then relate to what you're doing on social. So we're moving into 2020, and while universities don't follow the calendar year like most businesses, I still think it's a good time to set yourself some resolutions, to look at planning. There's a good chance that some of you will be setting your budgets for the following academic year at the start of 2020, so it's always good to think ahead. And the first one, I think, where you need to be focusing your time and energy is how do you set yourself up to manage communities? And we're seeing a real trend of people wanting to move to smaller groups. We're still seeing the fallout of the sort of Facebook scandals, and how people want to take control of the experience they have on social. And these communities won't just be one group. There'll be a wide variety of groups, whether it's your advocates, so people that are championing what you're saying. It could be your incoming applicants, and even they won't be one group. They'll be split down into interests, subject areas, courses. Accommodation is a good example where it works quite well. Sort of pre-networking. It could be your current students on courses, sort of student groups, student interests, societies with the Students' Union, and also your staff. Quite often you'll find that universities have these interest groups because that's how everybody's been taught to sort of teach. They've taught to align to their subject. So how can you harness that energy to do more on social? And I think we'll start to see more of this. And if you're structuring your plans around community building, then I think that's going to put you in a good footing for the year, if not years ahead, because I don't think it's going to necessarily change for 1 year. It'll be a big growing sort of thing that evolves, and I think that's important to have in the back of your mind. Some brands, big brands do it. I know Adidas do, but there are universities that are doing it. I mean, in the past I've worked on smaller groups for student accommodations, incoming students, so they can meet their flatmates before. I know that some universities have got different course groups, and that works really well, and that's from applicant right the way through to graduation. So think about what works for your organisation, and start to test it out. Don't do it all in one go. Learn as you go along, but I think that's definitely something that you should be looking at for if you're not already. So the next one, I quite often get asked, should we be on a particular platform? And I'm not necessarily advocating that everybody rushes out to get onto TikTok, but it's one to watch. And I'm sort of saying this is something that I think you should spend some time working out if you do need to be on it, so that you're prepared for when everybody comes to tell you they need to be on TikTok. Definitely claim your profile. I've seen one university in the UK where I think actually I'm not 100% it's them that have put out the content. I could be wrong, and I think that's where you can sort of protect your brand. So just register it, put the logo on there, and you've got it. It's there. But don't rush into then deciding to post content. I think, as with any social media platform, you need to ask yourself why you need to be on there. You need to then work out, have you even got an audience on there? Have a real strategy. But this is where you can then, in a sense, come up with your reason for yes or your reason for no, I'm not going to be on there. And as part of that planning involving students, now it could be that you just give this to your student ambassadors or your content creators and you give them free run. I think the fewer rules and regulations you give them around TikTok as a platform, if you go down this route, the better. Now, the University of Limerick, I'm calling out here as an opportunity of good practice. I mean, some of their videos have been viewed by over 2 million times, and I know that from seeing the comments online about how they're approaching this, there's very much a sort of let's see what works, let's involve students. So yeah, definitely one to watch, go and follow. Hopefully this will start seeing a bit of a follower growth for the guys over there. But yeah, don't rush into it, and even just be a lurker on the platform and just see what's happening, see what type of content's working well. But yeah, just like when people were asking should we be on Snapchat, the same applies. Ask why.
Yeah.
So the first one, or third one even, is personal communication. I think with Gen Z now being fully entrenched in coming into university and being that generation, as well as going back to the Cambridge Analytica stuff, I think we'll start to see people increasing the demand for personal communication and choosing how they want to interact with the university. The challenge this puts on you is how do you resource going down that route, because you want to make it easy for everybody to connect with you, but you won't necessarily be able to do that if you're a team of one, for example, or you don't have the technology to deal with that. So whether you need to look at investing in technology that's going to help you manage the incoming messages as they increase, whether it's permission to set something up like a WhatsApp business account, or it could be that you're how do you set up a chatbot in the right way. There's some really good examples of universities such as Manchester that are using chatbots, and I think we'll start to see this grow, but again, it needs to be planned in a very methodical way. But I think we'll see less of the sort of open communication that people asking on messages openly on Twitter. It'll be, right, how do I send something on WhatsApp? How do I make it easy? Particularly if you're recruiting international students, you've got to think about the bandwidth of their internet in their region, where WhatsApp might be the prevalent platform, or it might be Facebook Messenger Lite. So I think that it's knowing where your audience is based and how they might choose to communicate, and using that data that's available publicly. I think We Are Social do a really good breakdown of which platforms are popular in which countries, and if you are looking at an international strategy, that's definitely something to dig into. Now, those are my top three, and I think that there's many more that you could focus on. So while I pick those as my favourite three, I don't think they're the only ones that you'll be considering. And just other ones that are just to highlight are user-generated content. I think it's not going to go away anytime soon, and I think it with the Gen Z students, that authenticity and transparency around what it's really like to be a student on campus, or experiencing internships, or whatever that might be. I think that's where you can involve more students to sort of grow your team in a sense, with sort of still paying the students to go out and create that content, but in a way that is sort of from a different perspective. If you're looking at investing in technology, some of the ones that I know in the sector that are becoming quite popular, social listening, so to get that intelligence and make your decisions based on what your audience are talking about, their interests, looking for sort of market research. It's a really good tool. Some universities are starting to embark on investing in a CRM and lead management software, so actually taking it from that inquiry that's come off social, goes into their CRM, and then they keep up that relationship going forward. As a quite heavy investment and a change in practice, but that's starting to sort of emerge as one that more universities are looking at for that whole user journey. And then governance and security. We'll be talking about some of the risks a bit later, but I think that we will start to sort of see the risks increase, and for marketing and IT teams to collaborate, so that social doesn't become that security issue that drops down between the cracks. And then getting to know your audiences. We're talking about TikTok as an example. Have you got audiences on there? Is it worth embarking on it? To actually spend some time and research those audiences in more detail, to be able to go back to senior lead and say, this is where we need to invest our time. That's, I think, going to be really powerful going forward. And one that I'm encouraging the universities that I work with is to try and encourage sort of senior leaders as brands to sort of say, but what do we stand up for? What do our incoming students, our current students, our staff want us to take a stand on? That could be climate change, it could be women in leadership, gender equality, whatever that might be. I think that they'll start to see that particularly the new generation of students will start to respect universities that do take up more of a stand, and actually join those conversations online. So when it comes to actually getting management buy-in, I think it is a real challenge when you go to a manager and say, hey, we want more money for social. And quite often you'll find that budget request will fail because they don't understand it, or they formed that view that because they've seen one negative tweet that actually we need to avoid social altogether. So this is where framing your sort of business cases in a very different way and going back to the earlier one about sort of your measurements and your KPIs, if you're focusing your business case on achieving strategic goals, and this could be, I've put some examples there of student applicant experience. So if you're thinking about how do you improve the NSS scores, you are contributing from the social perspective, or it could be that you're looking at how do you use advocacy to improve student recruitment. So you find your goal, you look again at that document, and that's the sort of speak that your managers will be talking about around the table. They'll be looking at what they can do to achieve the university strategy. And if you're building your business cases in that format, avoiding jargon, and I've put here the sort of KISS principle of keep it simple, stupid. Definitely don't put that in your business case. But to actually sort of draw it away from sort of all the jargon and marketing speak, and just say, right, we need to invest in tools or services that are going to help us achieve X. Maybe put some example figures, find some trend data, look for other universities that are doing something similar. Very lucky that in higher education people do share good practice, so connect with your fellow colleagues. If you're in a mission group, you'll probably find that there's a sort of a social media group that you can connect with, and just see how they're approaching it, and you might find that one of them's gone through something very successful and they'll be happy to share that business case with you. But definitely move it away from asking for money for social and instead asking for money to improve something and be contributing to improving that. So on the risks and challenges, Dan and I have sort of collaborated on coming up with a list for this one, and I'm sure these aren't the only ones. The first one we wanted to sort of highlight is tackling that digital wellness, both of staff and students. And it ties in with the understaffing of social media as well. So the two together, if you think about you're a team of one, you've probably got everybody assuming that you're just going to put something on social, and that sort of that expectation, being at the front line of having to deal with all the crisis situations. Everybody hates your Twitter handle that day because something the university has done, and it's not your fault, but at the end of the day, you're the one in the firing line. I think that can often get forgotten by senior managers. So I think that there's that side of it, but there's also the sort of how do you switch off, whether it's yourself switching off, whether it's encouraging your staff and students to switch off. We've seen universities try sort of digital switch offs. We've seen different ways of sort of trying to sort of bring that wellness in, and I think this is where we would hopefully start to see universities working collaboratively with different departments. So how can social work with HR to tackle that topic of digital wellness, maybe in Wellbeing Week that the universities put on. But think of those ideas, and I think don't be afraid to raise them. There's so many people out there talking about this as a topic, and when we were planning the webinar, the three of us were saying this is a very important space to be thinking in, and hopefully we'll start to see more universities coming out and being more public about that digital wellness. Yeah,
just to add to that, Rob, I think in terms of the digital switch off, or you say switch off or detox, yeah, kind of setting your social media hours. If you're going to do that, just make sure you communicate it very clearly. You know, it could be in your bio if the account isn't monitored, you know, after 5 p.m. or something like that. Just make it really clear, just to set people's expectations. Then you're not going to be you know, kind of offending anyone if you take longer to reply and those kind of things.
Cool. Do you want to pick these ones up, Dan?
Yeah, so you touched on understaffing a little bit, but I think it's a really good point. You know, if you're a team of one, like you said, everything rests on your shoulders. So try to find ways to bring in the other teams. You know, we use the phrase here at CrowdControlHQ of being the social media postman. Sometimes you'll get messages or questions coming in, and you're not the expert in that subject or topic, and then you end up sometimes like taking a screenshot, emailing it to someone, and then they send you back the response. You know, just loop them into the process of social media if you can in the first instance, just to cut down on the manual work. I know it's easier said than done for some, but see if you can do that. Yeah. Social media impersonation attacks. Yeah, look out for this. I know I hold my hand up. I've certainly been a victim of an impersonation attack before. With not in university, it was around eBay customer support. But you know, it's very easy. So just to make sure you're regularly checking for those types of things. data breaches, it's similarly linked to shared passwords and usernames. So I would say if you are currently sharing passwords and usernames, sooner or later there'll be a bit of a slip up, or someone will accidentally change the login details and lock everyone else out, or there'll be unauthorized access to those accounts. Obviously security is already super important, and is only going to get increasingly more so. So one of the ways is to just eliminate the sharing of usernames and passwords, and put in place processes and tools sometimes to allow all the users to have their own logins. The devolved structure, do you want to talk about that one, Rob?
Yeah, so I think sort of picking up on the sort of the stuff from the survey is that there are so many teams, departments, faculties at universities that it's very easy under these sort of structures for social media accounts to pop up everywhere. You might have a central team that manages the sort of the main brand accounts, whereas you'll then find that a faculty will set one up, or a research centre. And under this, it can become very difficult for universities to manage that and tackle it. It becomes a frustration of the centre, because they're constantly having to sort of keep an eye, is that a real one, is it not? So watching out for those impersonation attacks. And one way to tackle that might be to look at some sort of regular forum. So it could be that you have a practitioners group that meets once a quarter, just to sort of get everyone together. You can then bring up that sort of how best to sort of, if you've got policy on setting up a new account, it's how do you surface that, how do you make it regularly aware, sharing good practice, just as much encouraging people away from immediately setting one up and getting everybody into a good practice of asking that why question. So I think it's around finding new ways of tackling that issue, that sort of long issue of so many accounts being set up under a sort of space where actually we should celebrate freedom of speech and freedom for everybody to do what they want, because that actually we don't want to hinder creativity, but at the same time we don't want to weaken what we're doing as a brand to sort of say, right, okay, how do we get the most out of it? How do we surface your story in the best way possible? And that might not be through setting up another account. Then on the third-party tools, I think this actually links quite well with sort of the smaller accounts, less than the bigger ones. But if somebody has sort of found an app or one of those automated services that tweets how many people have unfollowed you, it's very easy for accounts just to add those to their platforms, and it then gets to the point where one of those services is hacked, and then that presents a risk. And I think that's what actually happened recently with the Met Police. It was a third-party app that had that had been hacked, and then that's how they'd managed to get into their account, rather than it being from their main sort of, it wasn't a password issue, it was the third-party app. And that's sort of the risk you need to be doing. So encouraging people to regularly review their settings within those third-party tools to say, okay, am I still happy that they're doing what I need them to do? Do I really need them? Because you might add them and then forget about them for 2 years and they're still there as a risk. And do you want to do the last one, Dan?
Yeah, I think this last point is, I'm not aware of anyone that's been kind of stung by this, but obviously under the new GDPR rules, anyone who interacts with you has a legal right to request all of the information you hold about them. So it's just thinking further ahead and thinking, okay, so if someone says, right, someone puts in one of those requests and asks for the history of all the data that you hold on that individual, how are you going to go about getting that? So just think about that, because it could be on your main brand account, or it could be on one of the, the school departmental accounts or something, or even on the housing account. Anywhere you've stored a history or a record of a conversation, or any details around that person's, name and address or anything like that, you need to be able to find that and then communicate it to them if they do put in one of those GDPR requests. So it's just something to kind of think about how you might handle that going forward. So I think that's it actually for the risks and challenges. As Rob said, this is not an not an exhaustive list. There are others that could be relevant to individual organisations, but this is our kind of top 8 list, I guess, of things that you can start to sort of approach and think about and try to tackle as you get into 2020. So with that, actually, let me see if I can pass control. So we've run through all sorts of bits and pieces, and I think now, Jill, if you're still with us, fingers crossed, I'm going to give you the ability to control the slides now.
Right, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
There we go.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm Jill. I'm from Teesside University, as you can see, and I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to talk a bit about the paid social media element of our student recruitment activity here at Teesside University. So first I'll give you a bit of context, I'll give you a bit of a summary of some of the paid market activity we do, and then I want to focus specifically on our clearing campaign and the paid social media that we do, that we've done within that. Can you hear me properly, Dan? Rob, is that okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great, okay, so let's get moving. Brilliant. So we do regular social media advertising as part of a series of integrated paid media campaigns. So by that I mean, you know, we've got paid search, we've got some display ads, we've got out of home, we've got radio, we've got cinema. So quite a range, as I'm sure, you know, a lot of you do at your university. And we do it through a media buying agency because, as I say, we've got quite a large spend. And like many other universities, our campaigns include a substantial undergrad recruitment campaign. It runs from from September to July each year. And within that, we'll always have some social media advertising live, sort of a kind of always on approach. And then we'll have additional campaigns, again, like a lot of universities. We have a focus on clearing, we will have a focus on postgraduate recruitment, we'll have some specific campaigns for academic schools or faculties, where we want to promote specific subject areas, degree apprenticeships, that kind of thing, and so it goes on. So, and it's something that you've referenced, Rob, as well. We base our campaigns and our media spend on a number of factors, as I'm sure you know all universities do. We look at any specific sector research, we look at performance of previous campaigns, performance of specific platforms and formats, and where possible we'll try and do some A/B testing as well. And this is what you're talking about, Rob, we need to measure that to ensure it's effective. So we measure the social media advertising in terms of conversions and cost per conversions. So we'll use UTMs, we'll use Google Analytics, and from a recruitment point of view, that might be the goal conversions that we would consider would be things like, you know, booking on an open day, which I think you mentioned, downloading a prospectus, completing an online application, exiting to UCAS, that sort of thing. So with that in mind, I want to talk specifically about our clearing campaign earlier this year, our 2019 campaign, just as a kind of bit of a case study. So unlike our previous campaigns, we took social media as a starting point for this year's clearing campaign. That might be something that other universities do. It was new for us, so that was a bit of a shift. So we wanted to make the inspiration kind of like this kind of Instagram look and feel. We wanted it to be bright, we wanted it to be upbeat. And we also developed messages and assets with those platforms in mind, with Facebook, with Instagram, and with Twitter in mind. And that's, like I say, that was new for us. We would have probably done it the other way around in the past, so this was our starting point. We use real students, you know, you can see a bunch of them in front of you. We used their stories. Some of them came to Teesside through clearing, some of them came to Teesside through different routes, but we tried to link it into their personal stories wherever we could. And we took video and photography specifically for the platforms we're going to use them on, so specifically for promoted posts, specifically for carousels, specifically for a story. And as I say again, that was new for us. Can move on to the next one. So we developed specific messaging and imagery. Oh, that moves. I didn't realise that moved. That's good, isn't it? For each clearing segment. So, like for us, and probably a lot of universities will split that into what we might perceive to be a traditional clearing student, a student that never got the grades they were hoping for. We might have a different segment that's the students that changed their minds. So they wanted to do one subject, they've decided they want to do something else, or they wanted to go to university a long way from home and they decided to stay closer, or actually they wanted to decide to go as far away from home as possible. So those mind changes were another segment. And then for us, we have a lot of students that come to us sort of later in the cycle, so they wouldn't perceive themselves to be clearing students, but they do fit within that kind of clearing period of time, so the direct applicants. So that's how we focused our messaging, that's how we focused our carousels, different ones with different kind of segments in mind. We run our clearing campaign from the beginning of July right through to the end of September, so we split it into 3 time phases as well. So alongside that, we kind of have a series of promoted posts throughout, but it's just very much for us that kind of segmentation and that kind of phased approach. Where we can, we try and do some A/B testing. So we'd have, for example, different remarketing posts on Facebook and Instagram, and we test which was most sort of fit into those goal conversions most effectively, and we would optimise to those. We also tested 2 versions of our clearing landing page and just sort of tweaked versions, and then again optimised to the one that was performing better. I must apologise, there's somebody walking above me and they're being very loud, so I'm sorry about that. Let's move on to the next one. Here's just a couple of examples of our stories, just so you can, oh, sorry. There we go now. I don't know if you've got any sound and if that's working for you. It's a bit laggy for me, but just to give you a sense of that kind of upbeat, bright, colourful, real students, kind of with this kind of find your happy place kind of strapline throughout. And then another version, I think all 5 students on that all came through to us through clearing. So it's just kind of that kind of, keeping it real. And then obviously that's our starting point, but we have all the different platforms. Sorry, I'm not doing this very well. I'm trying to get are you able to move it on for me? Oh, there we go, look. So this is just to give you an example of how that look played out on billboards. We had it on the side of buses, we had it at the cinema, we had all sorts of places. So you can just kind of get a sense of how that played out in other formats. And this is just, I love this slide. What we noticed is we took a lot of photography and we took a lot of video. And we noticed that the things that perform best with us, the ones that just have this slight bit of movement, and they seem to be really effective. Things are just quite subtle and really caught your eye. I don't think I'm in a position to share our kind of clearing student targets, as I'm sure you wouldn't be, nor our marketing spend, but what I can tell you is that we achieved our clearing targets for student numbers. We improved our conversion rate from the year before, clearing campaign, and we improved our CPA on our clearing media campaign overall against the goals that I talked about. We also specifically improved our paid social media conversions. Our best performing social media format was Facebook remarketing. Our Instagram conversions improved year on year from 2018, and Twitter did less well. So I'm sure next year everything will be different, but that's where we got to at that point. If there was anything we'd do differently going forward, I think we realised that we took a lot of video that we didn't need and we used more stills than we thought we would. And I think the other thing we would do differently going forward is it's something you were referring to, Rob, we'd sell it into our senior management team earlier. Because once we did, it went down really well, but I think we probably had to try a bit harder than we expected to, and that was a bit of a lesson for us. So that's us.
Yeah, brilliant. And I really love this slide as well, Jill. And I fully know what you mean. Just that little bit of movement, it's just a bit eye-catching, isn't it? It just draws you in. And I think once you get drawn in, then you're into the frame of mind of consuming that content, like whatever it is, like whatever you put alongside these kind of imagery, this kind of imagery. And I love to hear.
And I think we kind of get overwhelmed a lot by a lot of the interactions that we have, don't we? And just having that kind of bit of subtlety proved to be really engaging. Yeah,
it's really effective, really effective. And just fascinating to hear that you started with social in mind this year for this campaign. So that was the starting point, whereas I guess you would create assets previously and then they would be adapted for social rather than starting with social.
Yeah, and I think that made the real shift, and I'm sure lots of universities do that already. You know, we may well have been very late to that party, but we saw the difference and we saw the benefits, and you know, I would really advocate that.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. So that pretty much brings us to the end of today's session to wrap up. So as I said at the start, you know, if you've got any questions, to submit them into the little questions box. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if we have any new ones. But yeah, if you have a question now, please submit it, or you know, feel free to reach out and get in touch with us after the session if there's something that pops into mind. You know, after the end of today's session. Bear me 1 second. I'm just having a quick look. Just a real quick one for you, Jill. Did Teesside work with an agency on the creative for clearing, or did you produce this in-house?
Yeah, good question. We are lucky enough to have our own full-time photographer, and we've got our own video guys, and we use our own students, so we did all of that in-house. We just used the agency for the media buying aspect. Which was really nice because we could kind of really hold on to that vision that we had from the start and work through. So we were lucky enough to work with our great creative team inside the uni, yeah.
Brilliant. So the creative was internal, and then, like you said, the media buying was through the agency.
That's right.
Great. So question from Jane. Your earliest stats on university and social media. In the earliest slide, so I think that was around where the stats are coming from. So it was I think it's some research completed by a marketing agency in the summer 2019 about how I can tell you what, I can dig it out and I'll share it with you after. I can't remember off the top of my mind, but it was, yeah, some research that was done in the summer, I think, of 2019 on university social media estates. So yeah, happy to share that. Once I found it. If there's any other questions, oh, there we go. Any other questions? Now's the time to ask. Thanks a million, Dan. That would be great. No, thank you for joining us. I think that's it. I think it's a wrap, guys. So thanks so much for everyone joining. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jill. It's been fascinating to hear your kind of insights and experiences.
Thanks for having us.
Being able to share it with everyone who's on the line today. No, thank you. It's been great. And you never know, maybe we do the same again next year. Looking at 2021. So thanks a lot, everyone joining. Have a great day. You will get a copy of the recording, I think, later this afternoon once it's available. So yeah, look out. You can obviously watch it again at your leisure or share it with colleagues as you wish. So yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great day.